This episode is brought to you by CVS. Taking care of yourself doesn't just mean listening to this podcast every day, though we wish it were that simple. It can also mean using products to support your well-being. And at CVS, you'll find vitamins, supplements, and immune support products that can help keep you healthier, as well as flexible shopping and delivery options. And right now, you'll get $10 in extra bucks rewards when you spend $30 on wellness support products. It pays to be well. Head to CVS.com today or visit your local CVS store.
The Wheel of Time, Season 1, Episode 6, The Flame of Tarvalin has ended, but we are just getting started talking about it here on Post-Show Recaps. That's right, folks, we are back weaving the wheel, weaving as the wheel wishes us to weave. I don't know, I'm just verklempt. I'm Josh Wigler, I'm not actually verklempt. This is DM Philly, a.k.a. Rich Filiberto, on these mean internet streets. Clever as a pike, this guy, strong as the tides. DM Philly, I'm feeling so many feelings.
My sweet, sweet pufferfish, who is verklempt? I'm feeling a lot of feelings. That was a really a big journey. That was an awesome episode of TV.
It was very, very good. It was very moving. I was a little worried coming into the episode, believe it or not. Well, the internet loves to hype. You know, and so there was a lot of hype coming into episode 6 of this was the last of the screeners. I watched this 5,000 times. It's so good. I'm like, okay, all right, well, it better be good. And then every scene has Moraine. Moraine's in every scene. Moraine is absolutely everywhere. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm in. This is good. This is very, very, very good.
Yep. I was saying it a little bit on Twitter, right? Rosamund Pike has been like amazing all season, to be sure, but this is what I was waiting for, right? And I've got some nits to pick and some criticisms I could throw around, but they're very light. This was a really good episode of TV, and I really enjoyed it. A crazy emotional journey.
A really fun ride. And one that I know is going to be an episode that I think moves away from the books in some ways. It seems like, I'm sure you're going to get into that in the book club once the book club rolls out for the episode 6 book club. Do you have that lined up? Do you know who's coming on?
Yes, we're going to go with the post-show recaps panel again this week. We're going to have our usual suspects back from last week. We're really excited to talk.
Okay, so you're going to get into all of that in episode 6, but for the show-only viewers, of which I mostly count myself, this is an episode that really moves the ball forward in a lot of meaningful ways. The gang is back together, mostly, kind of.
Mostly. Mostly. We've had like a last-minute substitution. Is that what you call them in sports ball?
I think that's right. Is that a substitute? Oh, well, I guess Loyal is coming in for Matt.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
We traded an angry Emmons fielder for a very upbeat Ogier.
The tonal shift is significant. If this is who we're talking about as the new Matt Caulfield is Loyal.
Both real fun, good time guys, though, you know. These guys both seem like very pleasant at their best, at least.
Yeah. A very provocative joke that I just made. That is a deep cut for people who are paying more attention to the Wheel of Time discourse. But we'll get into all of that at a future podcast. Try to keep it cool for now. But Loyal is here, and that is good. And Matt is doing whatever Matt is doing, and that is decidedly bad, Rich. This is not good. I thought that they got all of the evil dagger juju out of him.
Yeah, that was something, huh? Do you think that's it? Was that it? Was that just it? Moraine's not sure.
Well, he's still out there in the world, and I mean, I was trying to listen for any of that Pod and Fane whistling. I didn't hear any of that. Did I miss stuff?
You did not. I did.
But I was trying to hear.
I missed stuff, but I didn't hear any whistling. I saw no Potten nor Fanes this episode. Yeah.
I was trying to listen to see if there were any kind of musical cues to clue me into why Matt's being a turd, a sustained turd here. at the end of this episode. But we'll get into all of that. This is the Moraine episode, but it is also, as the title states, it's the Flame of Tar Valon. It is the Amyrlin seat. Mm-hmm. It is the arrival of, Swan Sanchi? Is that close?
Yeah, sure. In the audiobooks, Kramer and Redding say Sanche, Swan Sanche.
Swan Sanche. Okay, Swan Sanche, who is the queen shit of the Aes Sedai.
Oh, yeah. You said it, not me. She is the mother. She is the queen.
Rocks.
She is badass.
Yes. A really great character making her debut here on the Wheel of Time this week. How hyped were you to see this character make the leap to television?
Man, in all the imagery and the promo materials, like the trailers, you get that shot of her sitting in the seat, and it's so freaking awesome, Joss. Just the costuming, I'm seeing a lot of people talk about how staggeringly kind of beautiful this episode was when we get to see this whole circle of Aes Sedai, many of them represented. Just this great, beautiful touch. The Aes Sedai, when they're raised up from accepted to full sisters, they're given a shawl, and it's like the taking of the shawl. And the Amyrlin seat, we touch on it a little in the episode. She is of all the Ajas and none, and so her shawl is of many colors. The shawl matching the color of your Aja.
Ooh, like Joseph.
Yeah, very much. So if you were paying close attention to the costume, Swan's collar, I'm sure there's a more formal term for the finery that woman was wearing, was this very pale, almost like pastel kind of rainbow inside of it, the many-colored shawl. Just an incredible performance. I'm beside myself, man. That was awesome. I love it. I love Swan.
Yeah. Sophie Okonedo, who is playing the character series regular as well, a late arrival here in season 1 as a series regular, but we're thrilled about it. It's very, very good stuff. It was just a great episode in terms of, obviously most, if not all of these episodes have been very good for the lore. Some have been better than others, I think, for the character building. This was a great episode for both. In my mind, I felt like I really got under the hood of Moraine Sedai in a very big way in this episode. I was really, really glad that the show invited us into getting to know her so much more, because it's so easy for us, Rich, to be in the position of the kids and just not trust a thing she's telling them. But for us to be able to walk, if not a mile in her shoes, but at least the vast majority of the extent of a 60-minute runtime in her shoes, I think was very useful for us as we're heading into the home stretch here. And we're heading into the home stretch, by the way. 2 episodes left of the Wheel of Time Season 1.
No joke. I'm really excited to see these 2 episodes. I'm really sad that there's only 2 episodes, but it definitively feels like the beginning of the home stretch. And I think you're right on point, right? When you read the text, Moraine is that Gandalf stand-in. She has that mysterious, uncertain kind of energy. We don't get point of view chapters from her, and we're supposed to be in the position of the kids. But I think that it's so important in the first season here that we are firmly able to understand why she's doing what she's doing, what's driving her, where she's coming from, and that she's sympathetic to us, right? She's such a powerful actress and an important character to the story. This is a very different way to tell the tale, and they have to make different choices, which we'll get into a little bit here. But I'm really, really happy that we got to see all of that.
All right, so let's not take another second. We're going to hop into the podcast. We will take a few seconds. What we'll do is we will do what we've been doing. We're going to throw it to commercial early on here. When we come back, we are talking through the Flame of Tar Valon all the way down the line. Stay tuned. All right, Rich, so I lied because there are some scenes that Moraine is not involved in, but they are all right now. Right? It's all the Swan Sanche stuff. Mm-hmm. Gosh, am I getting it? Am I close?
You're getting it 100%. Swan Sanche. I mean, you
Swan
nailed
Sanche.
It 100% there.
I have a fantasy name phobia. I feel like I'm just going to mess it up all the time and I'm going to get yelled at. No one's yelled at me. Everyone's been really cool. Thanks, folks. You're all great.
You got lovely people out here listening to us. The fact of the matter is that we've talked about it a bunch. Why aren't there more fantasy books where everybody's named John and Rob? That's not this book, my friend. Yeah,
no, it's not.
You get
it's
a Matt.
Fine.
That's it. Move on.
That's it. You get one Matt, and he dropped a T, I believe.
He sure did. Yeah.
You get Tiny T Matt.
Tiny T.
The Further Adventures of Tiny T Mac coming to you in 2022. So we start the episode up with this flashback sequence, this extended flashback of Swan Sanche's life, and she's living on the river, and she's with her. This is her father. It would appear, right?
Yep.
And he's missing a hand, and they're going fishing. And she's been, she's channeling. Am I using that right? She's channeling.
You are using it 100% right. She's channeling, and quite deftly for such a young child. When we're looking at people like Nynaeve and Egwene, who are not able to like control the weaves with that kind of precision, like this is notable.
Yeah. So it's channeling, not weaving.
No, they're channeling and they're
weaves.
Creating weaves.
Weaves.
They're channeling weaves, right?
Yeah, channeling weaves. Okay, I'm going to get this.
You totally are. Instead of
just in
casting
time-
a spell, they're channeling the weaves.
Just in time for the finale. I'll be like fully set, and then we'll take a year off, and then I'll forget, and then I'll do it all over again. So she's channeling weaves, Rich.
Mm-hmm. She sure is, yeah. Quite like deftly, she's like tying knots for her father. The backdrop is beautiful. It's fall. It's the river. The music, I just want to like note right here, like God, there's its own kind of magic in that kind of choral beat that's like all rising. I'm just like, my breath was taken away. I was very happy with this opening.
It was great. The town that she's from, or the town that she's been living in with her father, at least, is razed to the ground. I was a little lost, Rich, in terms of, is this where they're from? Is this a place they're hiding out?
Let's talk for a second. So there's all these X-ray features. I've been digging into those. So Swan Sanche is much like the great Jin Su Quan, the child of a fisherman. And so she's raised by this fisherman. Keep your ear out for the fish.
Can I call him King Daddy Swan?
Yes. Please. It was right there.
I know that's the first name, but this is a down the hatch crossover, low-hanging fruit. I have to pluck it.
For any of you Lost fans out there, you go check that podcast out because it's a lot of fun. Daddy King Swan, I think I got it wrong.
King Daddy Swan.
King Daddy Swan and Swan herself. They live in the nation called Tyr, and there's a great opening shot as we come down into this valley with the fall landscape. We see this huge kind of building towering over the mountains in the back. I believe that is the Stone of Tyr, like notoriously one of kind of the wonders of the world here. But
we heard about that earlier in the season.
We sure did. We heard it mentioned.
When, what was her name? Dana, right? Was like, I want to go see that. And then she turned out to be a dark friend.
Indeed. It is this great edifice that stands in the world like an impossible structure that people don't even know how it could be made. There's rumors that the Ogier built it. But the gist is, the nation of Tyr, man, they hate channeling. They hate weaves. They are not keen with this. It is outlawed and illegal. So Aes Sedai are allowed in Tyr, and some are respected, and many have positions of power, but technically they're legally not allowed to channel. So what we're seeing like play out in this whole first bit, Swan's channeling, we hear the dogs barking in the background as she's like pulling the weave together. Nice little touch. They come home. It's not the entirety of their town, Josh. It's their home. Their house is isolated and burned. Yeah. And we see a mark again on the door. We've seen it a couple of times over the episodes. In episode 1, when Lan finds the Trollocs butchered, this is the fang of the dragon. It is almost a teardrop shape, curving with the point aimed down. I'm just going to take a second to point it out now. It's sort of book club stuff, but I doubt we're going to get into any of this in the show. The tear of the dragon is one half of a yin-yang symbol in that shape.
Interesting. Yes.
Okay? The other half of that symbol, the flame of Tarvalon.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Interesting.
Right? So we have these echoes, right, of the male half, the female half, these two parts making one whole. You can kind of conceptualize this, and it's described a lot better in the books. We kind of get the imagery here. I just wanted to, like, drop in and note that.
Yeah, because that is something that we hear about as, like, the male side and the female side of the source. So this is some of the symbolic ways that this is represented in the world of the Wheel of Time.
Yep, and the Fang of the Dragon is used as a kind of a mark, a black mark. It's like carved into your door.
If it's basically saying, like, this person, you're the dragon, or like, we suspect you could be the dragon, or at least you could be as bad as the dragon. Like, this is not necessarily a flattering thing.
Yep. So they come burn her house down because you hear her dad, you can't do this only when we're away from the village. And she's like, nobody saw, but somebody knew, right? So her house burns and she is sent off on her own to circumnavigate the globe just about. That's pretty impressive.
He sends her to go to the White Tower completely on her own, and that's going to take her, I don't know, months to get there, you would say?
Yeah. Yep. If we were to look at a map, it's quite a journey.
Why isn't he going with her?
Great question. There's great Swan stuff in the prequel, which obviously is occurring before the events of the Eye of the World, the first book of the series. We never really visit Swan as a child with her father here, so I have as much insight as you do. I think that we could maybe throw some criticisms here, but I think that in one light, it's meant to show the capability of this child. Not only that she can weave so deftly compared to our much older young channelers that we've been following all season. But the fact of the matter is she's very competent. She is a 10, 12, whatever we want to imagine she is here, year-old girl that can get in a boat and make her way to Tarvalin, right? Swan Sanche is one capable woman.
Yeah. He says, I can't come with you any more than fish can touch the moon. And she goes, fish's reflections touch the moon every night.
Swan infamously loves fish metaphors and fish analogies, and so this will be a thing that I expect to carry for as long as Swan is with us on this journey. It's very fun. I love that they did such a loyal job sticking to all of it. It's really great.
Yeah. So she's kind of throwing it back at him. He kind of, he's holding down the line, but I think appreciating her spirit. He says, you're going to do great things. If anyone tries to shame you, show them who you are. You're Swan Sanche, daughter of the river, clever as a pike, strong as the tides. Words we will hear elsewhere in the episode. A powerful introduction to the first version of this character, but when we're on the other side of the credits, Rich, we see her now. The Watcher of the Seals, the Flame of Tarvalin, the Amerlin Seat, and all of, or at least many Aes Sedai, certainly not all of them, I'm sure, but many Aes Sedai are there to witness her as she comes in. And I have in my notes, she is regal.
Oh, yes. She is incredibly regal. The costuming is incredible. The set's very, very cool right here. This is the Hall of the Tower. The Amerlin Seat has the Keeper of the Chronicles. That is their second. There's an incredible amount of formality and technicalities involved with all of this. The Amerlin may not enter the hall without the Keeper of the Chronicles announcing her. The Keeper may only enter the hall if the Amerlin is with her. All of these sets, we see these 3 sets of the different colored Ajas around them. These are all sitters, is the formal position. They are called the Hall of the Tower, much like the hall itself is the hall. These women are also the hall. These are sort of the leadership council of the Aes Sedai. This is all a very big deal. It was very cool, and she is very regal.
We get it a little bit in this episode of isn't it kind of awkward that her name is the Amerlin Seat and she also sits on the Amerlin Seat? So now we also are dealing with the Hall of the Tower in the Hall of the Tower. What's up with these Aes Sedai? They can't just come up with more names?
Indeed they are. We had a friend of ours, our friend Aiden yesterday had pointed out to me in the Discord and was asking oh, it's like the Holy See, huh? And I'm like, yeah, I suppose it is. Jordan loved to pull from a lot of our mythology in the building of this. I'm going into that in great detail in the book club if anybody wants more of that. But there's a lot of great energy there. It's replicating some of the nonsense we do in history, right?
Yeah, I guess it's just a thing. I mean, I'm not complaining. I think that these names are cool. I want to know what the Amerlin part of the Amerlin Seat is. Is that something you shouldn't tell me yet?
It's the old tongue, and we'll probably get back to it. We're going to talk about the Amerlin Seat a lot on this journey. Yep.
Don't tell me anything yet. Okay, so bring in Logain. And so Logain, the false dragon, is brought before Swan, and this is a journey, this part of the scene, because Logain shows up and he talks a really big game, Rich. He's telling the Amerlin Seat, they say that you're weaker than you've ever been. And when I said that I was rising up against you, I had an army at my back inside of a year. I was one man fighting against 9 mighty Aes Sedai. and these are his words, not mine, and I still staked that green bitch to the wall. And the room is just, the energy shifts in this horrible way. And yet, Rich, this is not enough to move Swan into executing this man. She says that he's going to serve as an example to false dragons, and he will live his days being watched and studied and examined and lose all of his freedom until he loses himself to the madness. And this is when Loghain's veneer completely drops, and he just goes into kill me, please kill me territory. Fabulous, absolutely fabulous stuff.
It's magnificent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to the point, to like clarify for anybody out there, is not like this is not characterization of Loghain. Loghain is not like really like this hostile necessarily to them. He's like begging for the sweet release of death. He's looking for suicide by Aes Sedai. Yeah. He's very much trying to push her over the top. I saw a lot of really loyal book fans getting kind of stressed. There was a 2-minute preview of this episode released this week, and people saw this kind of out of context to the rest of the scene, and were like, oh gosh, I hope they just don't make it just about gender and like the men versus the women, and this guy hates them because they're female, because it's not really that. Loghain like spoke to the King of Ghealdan in the opening of that episode when we saw him, and he talks about like he wants to heal the world. Loghain is coming from like a somewhat benevolent perspective in his motivations here. His goal was not to go shatter the Aes Sedai. He believed he was the dragon reborn. Was he? Who knows? He believed so, right? So there's a ton of interesting stuff happening here. Yep.
Yeah, and so I read it that way as well, even without I haven't met Loghain in Eye of the World. I've only heard about him, so a lot of his story clearly has been brought into the show from later in the book. So I don't really know much about the character, but I could tell you that is how I read it. Like, I read it as a guy who knows that if he's not killed relatively swiftly, his life is going to be horrific, or at least miserable for him, and so he's trying to push them into doing something that's going to take that off the table for him. And she is not moved by, she's not persuaded by these kinds of emotional arguments. She is very much listening to sound judgment and reason in keeping him alive. He's been gentled, and he will be more useful this way rather than being executed as a martyr. That would be tactically bad.
Oh, yeah, she's implacable, and this is a consistent thing with all the men that are captured and gentled as he was, right? They are kept alive. They are not, like, typically executed. Often, once they are gentled, their kind of will to live falters, and they will end up dead along the way. But she notes a bunch of things. You will be studied, she says to him. He's going to be kind of kept to be watched, a little bit like a guinea pig. And Swan's implacable, and she makes a clear point here that, like, the laws matter. She is the absolute authority of this very rigidly codified system of incredibly powerful women. And she offers the line to them, right? These laws don't exist to protect us. They exist to protect the people from us. We heard it in the beginning, Aes Sedai in the old tongue, servants to all. And Swan seemingly like takes this very seriously, right? So yeah, I just loved the way that this all played. I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool.
I loved it. I thought that scene was great, and I loved that it continued. There are very big scenes in this episode, Rich.
They are, right? Like, you feel like they might come to a close, but they, like, evolve. They shift. It's almost like each one of these scenes has a beginning, middle, and end very sort of clearly. They're on their own journeys. Yep.
Theatrical, I think that there is sort of the stage drama quality to this opening scene, post the credits anyway, that feels like I'm watching a show, like on stage. I'm at a play. It was really, really, really neat. I loved it. So Loghain is carted off. Who knows where we will go with that character. I'm really excited for whatever his journey is going to end up being. But Swan has to have words with the 3 surviving Aes Sedai who were in charge, at least, of the capture of Loghain. And she's got questions. She says this man deserved a fair trial, not battlefield justice. we've got rules in place. You shield first, you gentle second, and kill last of all. And Leandrin's pissed. She does not like being questioned in this way. I was surprised that it's Alana, of all people, who steps forward and defends Leandrin and says, listen, this dude was tough. We had to gentle him. You weren't there. Like, it was really, 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 really bad. We didn't have much of a choice.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? There is this kind of clear delineation that we get into later on where, like, the blues and the greens and the reds are very opposed. The blue and the green Aja smaller than the red, as it's, like, depicted in the text, right? And so there's some political structure, and we're starting to unravel it, right? We're starting to, like, dig into all of that. So it's a striking moment, and we could see that the sitters here in the hall are, like, taken by it as well, right? And Moraine even, like, gives her that look like, are you effing kidding me? You gonna, like, what? Moraine just, like, not seem especially thrilled to have to, like, lean in on this, but she does, right? She like buys in on this kind of train. Yep.
No. So Moraine is able to kind of get on board to a certain extent with all of this, but Moraine is not above criticism as well. Because we hear about, I believe it's Leandrin who blows up Nynaeve's spot.
Oh, yeah. Leandrin's not having any of this. Yeah.
Although later in the episode, she'll get hers, and that's great. But she brings up Nynaeve and how powerful she is. She's more powerful, potentially, even than the seat. And Moraine says, I didn't know. I suspected she could channel, but I didn't know. And Leandrin's just like throwing Moraine under the bus as a blue specifically, shading the fact that, as you've mentioned before, Rich, the blue Aes Sedai are, sort of special operations, right? Covert ops to a certain extent.
Yep, they're supposed to be out moving through the world, questing, pursuing their goals, collecting information on sort of the cutting edge of, like, the intelligence of things, right? And, like, it's important to note, right? But, like, Leandrin's making a very savvy political maneuver here because she calls out Swan. Like, what, are you going to go easy on her because you were part of the blue? This is unheard of. This is, like, incredibly taboo. In the depth of the books, we come to understand this is part of, like, the kind of chink in the power of Swan's armor when Alana was, like, talking to Moraine, like, last episode about, like, people are starting to listen to Leandrin. She's gaining traction. It's a thing like this. Like, at another time, at another age, the Amerlin seat, you don't talk to her like that. The Amerlin is supposed to be of all Ajas and none. And to identify, like, where she originates from is to insinuate that she's acting with preference, that she still holds loyalty there, and that is a insult most grievous to give to this highest of the sister, the mother of the Aes Sedai, so to speak, as they refer to her as, right? So she's pinching Swan here, right? By calling out Swan in front of the rest of the hall. Swan has to come down harder on Moraine than she would have wanted to, certainly, but then she probably would have if Leandrin says nothing here, right? She forces Swan's hand in a way.
Yeah. I mean, not entirely wrong as we come to find out that
Leandrin's
Moraine
spot on.
is getting preferential consideration.
Yeah.
I think that's right. There's something about who is the one that says perhaps it's your noble blood, Moraine Damodred.
That is Swan, believe it or not. Swan goes in, like, really hard on her. There's a couple of notable characters here. They're not a big deal. The one I will point out is the woman with the staff who's, like, pounding it on the ground. This is the Keeper of the Chronicles. I feel like we'll probably, like, get into her more later. But that's Swan who calls Moraine out. And it's really interesting kind of back and forth that these two have, given where we know where they're going.
Right, exactly. But the noble blood piece is new information to us.
Indeed it is. Yep.
We probably don't want to get too deep into that, I would guess, right now, Rich.
Moraine Damodred, for those who might have missed the name or didn't realize it was important, if you want to keep track of that, Damodred is Moraine's last name in the house of which she comes.
Damaged red. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. I have to go back and reread it again now.
I dropped the Kobayashi mug. Are you going to read this a third time?
You know, Josh, I just told our friends in the book club, like, stop me if I start, because I think I might have a problem. I'm, like, rolling into the end of the Wheel of Time, the last book again, and, like, I'm like, I could just read the Eye of the World real quick before I crack into the next stuff.
Oh, gee. Oh, gosh. So Moraine is, you cannot say what the purpose of your travel is or will not say. And she once again reiterates, I cannot say. So Swan says, all right, that's it. Kiss the floor. I'm in charge. Kiss the floor. Great rules. This is a great perk of the job if you're the Amberlin seat. Just make people kiss floors all the time. In our world, Rich, this is never going to be a good thing.
No, this
so
can't be
so
a
many
good thing.
germs.
Yeah, especially not. I didn't even want to think about it. They're really into like gross mouth stuff here on this Wheel of Time show, but I don't want to be kissing the floor. I'm good.
I'm good to not kiss the floor. Although that comes back in a wild way in just a little while.
Indeed, it does.
Yeah, kiss the floor. Okay, so Alana tells Moraine she should apologize publicly while she still can, but Leandrin, with big Draco Malfoy energy, warning that a reckoning is coming tomorrow, Potter. So we will see where that goes. Meanwhile, at the inn, Moraine has figured out where Matt and Rand are. It seems that Lan has probably figured this out.
Yeah, come on. Landman Dragarin, he's like getting stuff done. Moraine's in here like dealing with all this political up and down and like her own turmoil, and Lan's taking care of business. Again, just to reiterate, right, the Blues have many eyes and ears. These networks of information gatherers, every Aja has their own. We see Leandrin kind of like bragging about hers to effect later on, but there's people out here, and Tarvalin is the Aes Sedai city. The deference that the innkeeper gives to her, unquestioning. This is the deal, right? They are queens here, so easy enough for them.
Here in Tarvalin, they should not be as concerned of white cloaks as they would be outside of the city.
No chance, yeah.
Okay.
White cloaks, all are allowed to enter Tarvalin so long as they follow the law of the land. White cloaks, Eamon Valda is not like walking through the streets of Tarvalin doing his thing. No chance, no dice,
Well, he might not be walking anywhere if Egwene's to be believed. But so she comes in, she sees Matt and Rand. Rand is surprised to see Moraine.
It's so great. Oh, hey, Nynaeve, are you back? Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, it's awkward. But Matt is doing poorly, and he tries to attack Moraine with his knife. And Moraine grabs it from him. Meanwhile, Lan is taking down Rand, who's trying to fight them off because Rand's a stupid little boy. Moraine chastises Matt, you stupid boy, you took this from Shatter Logoth.
It's the Gandalf beat, right? You stupid boy. Talk about like line reads. Like, I just love it so much. There's such like great, you get it all right there, right? You can hear it in the tone and inflection of her voice. And Lan like just deftly manhandling Rand and his fancy sword is like my favorite, man. He's just like, come on, you idiot. What are you doing,
Man-handling Dragarin. I don't know. I'm working on it.
Handling, yeah.
To your point, I do want to just take a minute, because this is the Moraine episode, to just stop down on how incredible Rosamund Pike is. This should go without saying that she's just incredible, but one feature of Rosamund Pike that I really, really appreciate so much is how expressive her face is and how deft of an actor she is, that she knows how to utilize that. There are moments where she does have this huge Galadriel Gandalf energy when she steps into it, where she just seems like she is the carrier of so much ancient wisdom and somebody who you should follow into battle because clearly she knows what's up. And then there are these moments throughout this episode especially where she just has this beautiful smile that kind of, her whole face lights up. There's like a childlike wonder almost to her in certain moments when she gets to be alone with Swan and everything like that, but also the way that smile and that face and that ability to kind of like meaningfully regress as an actor shows up when she's overwhelmed with emotion, when something really powerful is happening. This is a very good showcase for Moraine as a character, but it's a really astonishing performance from Rosamund Pike all throughout. This is a good opportunity to talk that through.
I got to agree. Like you're taking the words out of my mouth. For me, like there's just equal parts, like it just incredible kind of strength of will and determination in her, and then this kind of like vulnerability. That there's just this one shot after she deals with Rand and Matt, and she's like out on the balcony, and there's this look on her face. It's like it's relief, it's joy, it's fear, it's uncertainty, all kind of mingled into one. And I love that, like, note the kind of childlike wonder, the way she lights up. I mean, like, I'm smitten. I don't know. I could only really offer hyperbolic and effusive praise at this point, because this was a nice long episode too, right? This was a pretty long runtime, and she just takes us on like such a journey along the way. I guess I'm going to note for a second, in the text, it is like a very important character trait to all of the Aes Sedai that they are implacable. They have what's referred to as the smooth and like unreadable Aes Sedai face. Obviously, we can't translate this to TV. If you put those 20-some women in that room for the scene with the Amerlin and none of them are expressing anything, like, that's rough. That's not, television, film. This is a visual medium. It's not a place for a bunch of stone-faced women. And I just am so overwhelmed by the kind of range and the deftness that she showed in being able to kind of use her skills to convey so much with no words,
She's exceptional.
She's a
also
gift, man. Yeah.
She's also clearly able to just the theater of the mind stuff that she's able to access, because she has this big scene now where she has to channel the dark magic that's coursing clearly through Matt. She basically takes venom out of him, and she like sucks out the venom symbiote and reabsorbs it into herself, and then thrusts it back into the knife. She takes all of that darkness out of him and puts it back into the weapon, or at least some of it. I guess there's a possibility that some of it's still hanging out. I don't know. But that's such a silly thing to perform. Could be
very cheesy. Yep, could be very, very, very cheesy. Yep.
You have no sense of what that's going to look like, especially on a season 1, and yet she does such a great job. And I think that, visually, for me, it was a little bit goofy, but not in a way that broke anything for me.
I can see where you're coming from, but I think that there was part of it that was also like visceral. Like, they linger here, This is not like a rapid, quick, she waves her hand and like, oh, the black evil comes out of us. It's like slow and churning and kind of like visceral. Like, I don't know. It felt like rough to me, a little bit like gross, as it's like covering her mouth and she's kind of like blowing it back into the dagger like, ugh.
It was sludgy. It was sludgy. But I was definitely, my predominant feeling was I was just like, ew, gross, the whole way through. So Rand afterwards is going to thank Moraine for all of that. And so it was just the evil that was consuming him. It's not that he can channel. And she says, well, the thing is, he's stronger than he has any right to be, because if he wasn't, he would have, this is a month and a half he's been like this. He should be long dead at this point. Yep. So it is a pretty clear signal, Rich, that whether Matt's the Dragon Reborn or not, Matt has something going on that makes him pretty powerful and important.
Yep. Agreed. We should be paying attention to all of these 5 kids from Emmons Field. Yep.
Yeah. If Matt touches the knife again, he may be lost forever.
Yeah, I like the way she talks about, like, the dagger is pulling at him. He's pulling at the dagger. There's a connection. He's had it for a long time. She thinks she cleansed it. Huge change from the books. We'll get into it in the book club, but, like, we're making some really major pivots here, which I'll talk about a little as we get to the end. But, yep.
Okay, cool. So Nynaeve shows up with loyal Builder. She greets him.
Builder, because, again, the Ogi are, like, these great stonemasons. They build the cities. The bonus feature this week on the X-Ray content, it's the story of the Steadings. It's called The Longing, and it talks about what happens to the Ogier when they leave their homes, why they're connected to their homes, how they sing to the trees. I just love Loyal. I'm so glad he's here, and I love, you could see the kind of respect that Moraine gives him. Builder's a term of deference that the Aes Sedai used to speak to the Ogier.
Yeah, very, very good. Nynaeve is not thrilled about Moraine showing up here and doing all this stuff and like, are you spying on me? And Moraine says, listen, if wisdom is the title you claim, I suggest you start using some. I love Nynaeve. I don't like seeing anyone drag Nynaeve, but I don't mind a clap back from Moraine here at all.
Well, yeah, let's get real, man. This kid's like sick as hell. Nynaeve's like pumping him full of herbs. How many days has she been coming to do this? First of all, Moraine's got her in a pinch. Like, oh yeah, remember that thing you accused me of? I'm gonna find your friends and not tell me. Well, you didn't tell me. And like, yeah. Like, what's wrong with you, Nynaeve? We've seen Moraine do incredible stuff. Nynaeve is proud. I love her. Believe me, I stan her. But she's perhaps too proud. She's why she is that way remains to be seen. But she made a very dangerous choice here, and I love that Moraine is chastising her, and I love that Moraine's like sharp. That she comes in with the sharp teeth for this one.
So Moraine also knows about the whereabouts of Perrin and Egwene, who have also made it to the city and are being treated by Yellow Aja. This is the healing class, the white mages.
Yeah, that's very funny. The Yellow Aja are the white mages for the Final Fantasy of Mind out there. There's a little beat when they were back in the hall, right? The Browns are kind of librarians, the collectors of knowledge, the keepers of knowledge, all about preserving it. The whites, philosophers. The Greys are mediators, legal experts, political kind of consults. And the Yellow Aja are the healers. Yep.
Best on Earth. Earth, she says. They're the best on Earth.
Oh, did she say that, Josh?
She says, yeah. She goes, the yellow are the healers, the best on Earth, she says.
That sounds like she was using Earth not as a noun, but as the name of something. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like that. Take me to the moon. I want to go. Every good fantasy story takes you to the moon. So Egwene took the great serpent rings from the White Cloaks. Valda won't hurt any more of your sisters. And by the way, do you know any reason why Perrin's eyes would have turned yellow like a wolf? And Moraine goes, what did you say?
Yeah. Yep.
What was that?
Don't tell anybody. Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Yeah.
Moraine, like, again, telling this young woman here who seems to be so smitten with this idea of the Aes Sedai. She is so proud to return these rings. There's a strength to Egwene, like, Eamon Valda won't do this to your sisters again, right? And Moraine's like, listen, don't tell anybody. These Yellow Aja, they're really cool. They're going to help your friend. Do not tell anybody that his eyes did that,
Yeah, that's not good. Well, it might be good, but it's not good for other people to know. This is a secret.
It is not. And I just want to point out, right, but Egwene's like, they turned golden like wolves, right? So, like, this connection kind of clarifying a little bit. I've been talking about it as we go, but clearly there's this affiliation between Perrin and the wolves. It's very muddy and confusing and unclear, but it's certainly kind of evolving as we're going,
Listen, I am just here for Perrin to go full teen wolf. I'm ready for it. I want the astounding wolf man from Perrin. This is what I want. And if I don't get it, I'm going to be mad. But also if we get it and it doesn't look good, I'll also be mad. So we'll see where it goes. I have no idea. Later, Moraine is getting dressed in her room. Lan shows up. He's like, hey, what the hell, bro? You frosted me out. Yeah, you masked your bond with me. So this is a thing that the Aes Sedai can do, Rich. Is they are literally, emotionally, magically bonded to each other, but the Aes Sedai have the power to, like, turn the faucet off.
Yep, and this is not like some type of magic they're doing. It's an absolute act of will, right? Again, in the X-ray features for people who want to dig in more. But the fact is that the Aes Sedai are masters of self-control. They go through like decades of training. Many of them will live far beyond the kind of natural lifespan of a normal human person, and they have a mastery of themselves, right? And she's able to kind of like just block off this emotional connection to Lan. And she makes this little beat like, oh, I thought you'd appreciate it. Like, it's been so long, you've had no break, and he, Lan does not appreciate it because he's got one job to do, and this is not helping him do it. He is uneasy. They're surrounded by enemies. He's not thrilled,
especially after his friend just died because his Aes Sedai had died. Like, this is a trigger point. But I think that Moraine is trying to express to Lan, listen to me well. Your priority has to be protecting the kids from Two River.
It is.
It can't be me anymore. Yep. So this feels very intentionally placed and is already stressing me out. to be honest, about what that could mean. But she's just being very clear with what the edict is. It's about them. It's not about me.
Them first. This is her order to him in a sense, right? At least her wish is known. I don't know.
So then Lan says, "All right, well, have fun. Be back before dawn." So he knows what's coming up. He's aware of all of this.
He says, I will keep watch while you're gone. And we're like, gone? She's going to bed. And then he's like, give her my love. And we're like, wait, what? What is going on here? And she goes back to this little painting that she had above the hearth there from last time.
And so is she like walking into the painting?
So, my friend, we have deviated very far from the text of the books, but I can say this. Within the context of the books, there are items of the one power. They're called angrial. They are subtle distinctions. There are tir angrial and sa angrial and angrial. These things perform feats, achievements, miracles. Some are simple. Some might merely make music. I have this quote written right out of the X-ray features. Others can do more powerful things, like create doorways to different places, spaces, or experiences.
Okay.
So Moraine clearly enacts this angrial that is in her room. It creates a passage to where they go is a matter of great speculation, which we will dive into with great depth on the book club, but I will say no more here. Your guess is probably more interesting than mine.
Okay, well, I just kind of figured that she just, in our world, some murder mysteries feature mansions where you pull on a book in a bookcase and a secret chamber opens up and you go into the secret room. I kind of figured this was just that, and this is sort of secret passageway. She's cluing her way towards Swan's room. But that's how I read it. But maybe this is more of an existential, metaphorical experience. I don't know. Either way, very clearly, Moraine and the Amerlin seat are an item. They are a thing. When have we ever followed the rules? And they kiss, and I'm just like, yes!
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I love it. Yes.
I love it, as we've been like making these allusions the whole way to like, oh, Swan's angry at you. Swan's threatening to bring you all home.
It's just a great turn on those. Yeah, it's a great turn on those earlier scenes. It's just really, really beautiful.
It's magnificent, right? This like comes out of nowhere. There's just this simplicity. After having seen them kind of all like gussed up in this incredible like formal attire, the simplicity of these kind of night shifts that they're wearing, their like hair down, the vulnerability between the two of them. There's like great chemistry, just palpable off them from the beginning. I love it. I am smitten with all of this, very much so.
Very clearly, they have to be secret over this because people would be pissed. I would imagine if it was known that the mother of the Aes Sedai and another Aes Sedai were an item, were romantically involved. I cannot imagine that is a thing that goes over well. But probably more pointedly than this, so I have not met this character in the book that I can remember. Oh, maybe I do briefly in Eye of the World, right? I think that she is there for a hot second.
So she shows up. She's featured very prominently right at the beginning of book 2. I'm not sure that we see her in book 1. I don't think you do.
There's someone in Eye of the World that I might just be conflating a character or two.
It's so hard for me, like where the cutoffs are, but I don't think we
You're
do.
good.
I think we meet
Don't
Swan
worry.
Sanche at the beginning of the Great Hunt. There's a lot that we're pulling on here from the books. There's a lot that has changed. I just want to like stop down, I guess, at this point. You hear a lot of people talking about, and me amongst them, about how this series, when it first started coming out in the 90s, was like very progressive, right? Robert Jordan was trying to like make some clear overtures. It was hard to put like get your publishers to agree to put like prominent LGBT characters in a book that you're selling to a mainstream audience, let alone in the very small genre of kind of fantasy, where I would imagine that the demographics skew in a way that like I fulfill. And I want to speak like really thoughtfully here as like a cis white guy in my middle age, right? But Jordan speaks often, and the relationship in the books is like noted that they were pillow friends. And this is a kind of coded term that they're using. It's used amongst many of the Aes Sedai. What's important about the way that it's written about in the books, there are no hugely prominent relationships that exist like this. This is a distinct change from the text, that we see the two of them so intimate on screen, on page. We don't see that, though it's very much alluded to in all of what we kind of learn about them along the way. And I just think it's such a kind of beautiful moving forward of like where we're at kind of culturally, where our like acceptance and our tolerance levels are, to like just put this right out there overtly. We don't need to like dance around or kind of like make illusions here. Let's like put it right in front of us. These two women love each other, and that much is overwhelmingly evident from their relationship in the book. They are extraordinarily close. They have some history, and this is a profoundly important relationship to one another. And like, God, I just loved seeing it so much, Josh.
I loved it. It makes me really excited about their dynamic moving forward. It gives me a lot of emotional investment in the Aes Sedai as an order, because I know that people, certainly Leandrin, who sucks, is clearly going to be, having an eye on the Amyrlin seat at some point in time, or other people are. I think Alana was even talking about, like, there's strife here, man. Like, this isn't good. Yep. I'm now deeply invested in who is sitting in the proverbial Iron Throne in a way that I don't know that I was on Game of Thrones. On like Game of Thrones, it was more like, kind of like Survivor, right? It was sort of who's going to win, who's going to win. And now I'm like, how are we going to make sure that she keeps that thing? I don't want to see her thwarted. I don't want to see her thrown off. It was helpful that we got to see where she comes from literally in those first scenes of the episode. But to now see that Swan and Moraine are in love with each other and are both working towards the same aim, but can only do that. They can only be so public about it because of how it would probably influence the political dynamics of the order, certainly. I'm now really invested in the success of their shared goals, the success of the two of them in their lives together as a couple, and I love it. If this is a change from the books as far as making something that was under the surface, bringing it above the surface and making it overt, I'm hugely in support of that without having read any of the text beyond book one. I think that this is great. It remarkably worked for me. When it happened on screen, I was alone in my hotel room. I'm on a trip right now, and I must have shouted so loud that the other people in the hotel were like, "What's going on?" I was like, those were the words. Like, hell yeah, I loved it. I was so happy about it. I just thought it was great. I thought it was great depth to add to Moraine specifically. Give her something that's really powerful to fight for, something personal to her that isn't just goal oriented. Give her a reason to want to make sure the world isn't destroyed simply other than I'm an Aes Sedai and it's my job. Move it away from the career, put it into the bucket of her personal life. I thought that this was a really smart choice.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you here, right? Like, Moraine has been great, and she's powerful, and she's interesting, and all this stuff so far. But the way she's been approaching this has been a little bit cold and clinical almost, right? In the sense of, like, look, I have a job to do. We need to find the dragon because it's important. But we dig into it here. Swan's like, you were in the room. She mentions a name, Gitara Moroso. Swan, and it's there, like, in the X-ray features, again, that it's very quickly noted here. But what Swan is saying is we were the only two in the room. Gitara Moroso and Aes Sedai, when the two of them were young and accepted, coming up, being trained before they formally took the shawl. And Gitara had a prophecy that a child was born. The dragon has been born right now. And then she dropped dead. And so it seems as though this was 20 years ago, which lines up with Moraine's timeline. And this is like the inciting incident in Moraine's life that sets her on cue. And the two of them have been conspired in this from the beginning. I think like we should be taking that out of this scene as we walk away from it.
Yeah. So they have been they've been in league with this search for the dragon. Moraine says that she's found the dragon, but it might be complicated. It could be 5 potential people from the same village, and yet Nynaeve isn't the right age. And so there's this question of why would the wheel split the dragon's soul into many? Is there historical precedent, Rich, for people being reincarnated into multiple different lives, if you know what I mean. Like this idea of one soul going into 5 different individuals. Is there precedent within the universe of the show for that happening? Like, is that something that they are aware can happen?
It's certainly aware within the universe of the show to the books, like the way that we talk about the kind of lives coming and the cycle and the wheel and the pattern and how it's all woven is a meandering kind of journey in itself. And I invite you all to like dig deeper in. But we've certainly like had this idea hammered home in the 6 episodes we've gotten, right? And this notion that Moiraine's like, look, like this is a 3,000-year-old prophecy. How many times have we reinterpreted it? What do we know? We can't be sure. Everywhere I go, I hear different things. A gleeman says a dragon has many heads. Like,
right.
I don't know. We're not, it's very unclear, right?
Yeah. So this is Swan calls Moiraine, "You're my little puffer fish."
Yeah, fish analogies. That's a line straight out of the books. It's adorable. I love it because Moiraine puffs up and gets prickly and doesn't want to have it. That noble part of her, maybe. It's just magnificent.
Yeah, a little pufferfish is good. I think that's great. That reminds me, I think that was in something that I can't remember why someone is called a pufferfish in a story that I like, and it is not coming immediately to mind, and someone's going to pick that up.
It's right at the edge of my mind.
It's right at the edge of my mind.
Overwhelmed it. We'll remember it as soon as we're done recording.
Totally.
I think
it's not because the pufferfish was on The Masked Singer. There is some TV show. God, I can't. It's Breaking Bad. It's Jesse Pinkman. Pinkman.
Is it really?
It is.
How am I forgetting that?
It's Jesse Pinkman. Walter White's like, "Be a pufferfish." He's like, yeah, I'm a pufferfish. I'm a pufferfish. And then he lights a bowl, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's how that goes down. I want to see that scene reenacted with Moiraine and Swan. Be a pufferfish, Moiraine. Yeah. I'll be a pufferfish.
Yeah. Too good. Say my name. There's so much great stuff that's happening in the scene, right? The turnaround of like on your knees, like, dear God, like what a line, right?
So good.
And the note here that like it's very subtle, but like not for nothing, both of them seem to be willing to like kill these kids if that's what it comes down to. Moiraine
that's what they say.
Yeah,
they have to,
right? But like Moiraine says, like, as Swan's noting, the prophecies all say the same thing: either that that the dragon will fight the Dark One, or that the dragon will join the Dark One. And Moraine's like, well, I'll kill them all before I let that happen. And Swan nods like, yeah, good. And that's pretty heavy, right? For
Yeah, if it comes, to because all the prophecy agrees that the dragon will kill the Dark One or join the Dark One, and if it's skewing towards join, Moiraine will do what needs to be done. Is what she says. She's willing to do it. So these kids do have a reason to be a little sus of Moiraine Sedai. No doubt. No doubt.
A great Survivor player, Aubrey Bracco, once said to me, more than one thing can be true at the same time, and this is true, right? Moiraine, like, had said to Rand back at the end, like, I would have done this for any of you. I would like to save any of you. She's telling Lan they need to be your priority. She wants to protect them. She wants to keep them safe. She's also entirely willing to, like, see them die if that's what needs to happen here. And so this is really hard. There's, like, a lot to, like, take apart about all of that, but I find it very interesting. It's certainly something we should be paying attention to.
Totally, absolutely. So Liandrin is going to overhear Lan and Moiraine talking about the kids. All friends of Nynaeve, And again, just like in extreme tattletale mode. And Moiraine snaps and turns around at her and says, Hey, I know about the dude in North Harbor. Walk away now or I tell everyone. And Liandrin has no clapbacks. Nothing to say in response to that.
Liandrin is shook. Liandrin's so proud of herself right here that she's going to roll in with the words from her little eyes and ears. I know Matt's name, and I know you've got these two at the end. And Moraine's like not having it. Moraine's like, yeah, okay. I'm 12 steps ahead of you, What do you think your sisters are going to do when they find out you're going to meet with this man? Which seems just like awesome, and it's a bit shocking, right? There's a little bit of a revelation here. Like, certainly the way Liandrin reacts, I think we can understand what Moiraine is saying is true. So what the hell does that mean? What is she doing here?
Right.
It's very interesting.
And it's not as if all of the Reds don't just completely reject men altogether, right? Leandrin seems especially vocally about this life. And so the fact that she seems to have a male lover somewhere, which could be the insinuation, it could be something else, definitely would... obviously, she strikes a personal chord with her in terms of knowing a secret that clearly she doesn't want someone who's very obviously her enemy in some way, at least in Moraine, to know, but also that it could be a big reputational hit to whatever it is she's trying to build.
I think it's like interesting you say that term enemy because there's a point, I believe it's in this episode, it might have been in the last one, where Leandrin even refers to Moraine as like old friend, and she's saying, I know you, you know. There's some insinuation here, like these two go back, right, for whatever extent it is. I love the response to it, you know. There's a little like thou doth protest too much with like the Leandrin energy. It's something to pay attention to, certainly. But okay. Moraine's like steel will, the way she like snaps and takes those 2 steps back, like I like pulled away from the TV a little bit. I got scared, you know, like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. That's intense. She's intense.
There's a quick moment where Moraine formally meets Loyal. Your name sings in my ears.
I just love this little beat. She says to Lan, what should I expect? And Lan goes, he's very upbeat. And she's like, okay, I can deal with that. You know? Yeah. It's like, it's so good, man.
So she needs his aid for something. We could circle back to this at the end of the episode. So Moraine is going to take Egwene to see the Amerlin seat. Egwene is the one who's like, isn't it weird that that's the name of the person and the throne?
It's not confusing. It seems confusing.
When is a person also a chair? And so Nynaeve comes in. It's a really nice emotional reunion between Egwene and Nynaeve. And Moraine says, come on, we don't have time for this. Swan Sanche waits for only one woman, and it's not you.
It's so good, right? The humor in this show, especially as like we've had kind of Matt step back a little bit, there's some like inherent lovely humor to Loyal that we discovered like immediately upon meeting him. But these little bits with Moraine are just like so good, right? These like little birds right here. I do have in my notes that I think it's interesting here. Like Moraine flatters Egwene. Moraine's like showing her the immensity of this like great ancient place. And then Moraine's like, oh, by the way, here's your friend who I've been hiding from you since you returned. She's very much like kept them separate. There's sort of all our eggs in one basket game that she's playing here. And then she's like, oh, and the highest woman of the land wants to talk to you, Egwene Alvier. There's a lot of manipulation that's happening here. It feels like to me. And as much as like we're on Moraine's side and now we're so emotionally invested in her, it's, I think, important to acknowledge what she's doing here quite deftly as well.
Yeah, I mean, she's trying to get them into the position that she needs them to be in, and Nynaeve certainly picks up on it. Once they're all with the Amerlin seat, and you know they're saying you're one of the most powerful. They say that you're the most powerful channeler in thousands of years, and Nynaeve's like, well, you must have very low standards.
Oh, poor Egwene though. In that moment, Madeline Madden like just killing it with the small beat. You could see her getting like so excited, like in 1,000 years. Like there's even the point where she sees Nynaeve and they're reunited. She's like, what are you doing here? Like, right. Because we've seen what Nynaeve did, but as far as anybody else knows, her friends, they have no clue, right?
No idea.
She was like left behind at the beginning, seemed dead. So I just love this reveal for poor Egwene. Her face drops, you know.
Well, they want to leave. Certainly Nynaeve really wants to leave, and so this is when Swan is making it clear that they cannot. I know what it feels like to feel like you deserve something different than what life has given you, to wonder why you can't just grow old with the people that you love, but you've been called to greatness. And the fate of all of us rests on you. And the wheel doesn't care if you're afraid or petty or weak, and it certainly does not care what you want. It calls you to this whether or not you can bear it. What we want is meaningless. The last battle is coming. All that matters is what you do. Very cool.
It's very, very cool. When we talk in the beginning, we talk about the kind of one-to-one, the relationship between the Eye of the World, this first book in the Wheel of Time series, and the Lord of the Rings series as a whole. This is the Gandalf speech, right? Like, we don't choose, we are chosen, we have to rise. I love the way that it plays here because it's quiet. There's no, like, swelling music kind of pulling at our heartstrings. There's no, like, kind of crescendoing energy coming through this. Swan is matter of fact and stern and forthright, and there's something a little bittersweet and kind of tragic, certainly, about what she's saying, but it's just like right out here, and that beat where like Nynaeve's like, come on, let's go, and Swan just snaps a finger out and they freeze. And that's not the power of the one power. That's the power of Swan effing Sanche, right? And like her presence in that room. Because like Nynaeve is not that enamored with the Aes Sedai. The role of the Amerlin seat is not necessarily something that like demands this reverence from Nynaeve, as we could see already. But this woman has just power and control of the space that I think is really interesting. And then again, to like just dig into like the X-ray feature of it all right here at this beat, they talk about the wheel and the pattern. The wheel weaves. The wheel is the cycle driving forward. The pattern is the web of all of us amidst this turning of the weave. And they talk about how like the pattern, it does not want, it does not like care for good or for evil, but it drives all things that live, all things that exist into position to fulfill the requirements to make this age what it is. It for thousands of years will manipulate all of us in subtle ways to put us where we need to be to fulfill this era of the wheel, this age of the wheel. All like really interesting, heady, conceptual stuff that we're going to dig into deep on the book club, but I just wanted to touch on since it was in those X-ray features.
Awesome. Moraine, there's this great shot of her standing on the ledge and Lan coming and saying, I'll stand with you in the hall. And she says, no, I'm fine. Just make sure they are there. So she does go to stand before Swan alone, surrounded by so many Aes Sedai, and she receives her judgment. And her judgment is exile, a very harsh determination from the Amerlin seat, from the Flame of Tarvalon. It's for her disobedience, and they have to bind this magically, right? There's this oath rod, and even without reading anything, beyond Eye of the World, I can grok what this is. This is like the same deal as why they can't break those three codes, right? Those three oaths. Like, you take one of these staves, you magically bind your stuff to it, and if you violate it, you explode probably? Like,
you just literally can't violate it. We see later in the episode a point where, as they're standing towards the end, just to jump ahead, Moraine's saying to the kids, I couldn't tell you what was happening because I didn't trust you when we left, and now and the words like catch in her mouth, because she can't say like, I trust you. She doesn't trust them, right? So this is an interesting scene. The oath rod is the item by which they take the three oaths and are bound to it. The one power holds them to it. They simply cannot act in an opposite way of accordance with these vows. It's really interesting. This is not from the books. This plan of exile is Moraine's own plan because the leader of the Blue Aja was saying, we need to keep you here. I'm going to situate you here in the tower. This goes completely against everything Moraine needs to do. So she and Swan are conspiring here. And the scene is so tragic and beautiful and emotional. But the using of the oath rod, a very strong choice. It's one that can be criticized. We'll talk about it more in the book club. I think that the three oaths are enough that they didn't need to do this, but they want us to know what this thing is. And so now we do. I thought it was pretty cool looking, at least. So that's awesome.
You brought her up. I apologize. I completely skipped past the scene with, what is her?
Maigan, her name is. It's okay. They when it. I think that there's interesting stuff there, but
my notes on that scene actually were Rich. Rich, please fill us in.
Sure.
Because there's so much lore.
So, again, when we saw in that first opening scene in the hall of the tower, there's three of each colored Aja. If you note, these are the sitters of the hall. If you note one of the green seats is empty, we can imagine that it's Karene's seat, who fell with Logain there. Maigan, it's really interesting. The women who are the sitters in the hall are not necessarily the leader of the Aja. Each of the Ajas has a single leader, a woman at their head. The leaders leaders are secret to the other Ajas. Only the people in the blue know who the leader of the blue is. And then there's all this weird stuff where, like, the leader isn't always one of the sitters on the council, but Megan is. She's a character from the books, pivoted and positioned a little bit. But, yeah, I think that the idea that we're supposed to get here is not even the leader of the blues actually knows what Moraine is doing. And she's scared. This woman is jumpy. She's seeing the greens and the reds, or the greens and the blues are coming to defense of the reds. The world is going mad. Old alliances are fracturing. This is this theme that we've gotten again and again and again. We're hearing many people talk about it in different ways. But like the hierarchy of the tower is like shifting. Megan notes a whole bunch of things. Ships are disappearing in the west. I may have to go find out what's going on, which means you may need to stay here, Moraine, to like fill up your space. Come home, be home. She notes Ailman, who we've heard about a few times on the show so far, have come over the spine of the world. Trollocs are pouring out of the mountains of mist, and then Aes Sedai sank the Taran ferry. Swan said at the last battle approaches, things are happening in the world that have happened for a minute. There's all this kind of kineticism that Megan's concerned with. I don't know. I think that that's about it. That's really important, right? Just to say that even like Moraine will not defer to the leader of her own Aja. She and Swan have their own plan, right?
Yeah. And even in this scene where she's swearing the oath, it's really beautiful, Rich. Their fingertips are touching as they're touching the oath.
So sweet, man.
The only thing is, if anybody is watching, and they all are, I don't know how any of them can't pick up, like, oh, they're totally doing it. Like, everyone in the room should know that these two are in love with each other.
So I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Again, this Aes Sedai serenity has to go to the wayside as we're going to transition to TV. I hope that the book readers out there can get on board with that. You know, I talk about it early on in our podcast journey here, but like this is another turning of the wheel. This is a different iteration of the story we love. Brandon Sanderson did a great interview last week. I don't remember who it was with, but I'm sure you could find it quite easily, where he talks about the nature of adaptation. And he gives this great kind of scale where he's like, the first Harry Potter movie is like a scene by scene kind of interpretation. We're recreating the book scene by scene. And that's like a very literal interpretation. And then on the other side of the scale, you have Kubrick Shining, where he's leaping off of Stephen King's book to do very much his own thing, right? And I thought this was this great, like easily kind of trackable thing. And what Rafe and what the producers and the writers and the creators of this Wheel of Time television show are doing is much closer to Stanley Kubrick's vision here. As we're in episode 6, I can like comfortably say somewhere in the region of 85% of like the scenes that we've seen in 6 episodes are not from the books. And I was talking about it on Twitter a little bit, but the emotional resonance of the characters is landing. The fact that they're able to convey so many of the same emotional beats that I got from reading these tomes over the last few years with new words, with different places, with new scenes. It just gives me a lot of confidence and faith in what they're doing, and I'm really like enjoying seeing it. But this is distinctly different than the story we may have seen last time. And so the implacable Aes Sedai faces have to go. These two women are emoting all kinds of energy. But I think that we can like read in like the emotion of the moment. The pain that they just have to do this. The Aes Sedai are like bonded closely. We see like every time we note that Logain killed sisters, every woman in that tower winces. They like all like feel these things together. So the fact that there has to be the schism, this division, I think is enough to like read the grief and the loss and the sadness in these two women's faces. As to their fingers touching, I don't know. If anybody sees that, they can think what they're going to think. What can I don't know.
Yeah, might be like, oh, well, special treatment. But I loved it. I thought it was powerful. I thought it was a really, really, really beautiful moment. And just like the tears streaking. And again, this was another Rosamund Pike actual legend moment for me. Daughter of the river, clever as a pike, strong as the tides. Very, 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 very good.
I think, again, like, Moraine herself told us, words matter, listen closely. She chooses a different set of words here. She notes she's exiled until she can be called home, which seems interesting to me. I just want to point out Tom Palmer, who sits with us on the PSR book club kind of buddies that we're going to get together tomorrow. He was talking about the fact that the scene felt very much like a funeral and a wedding, both at once. And I really enjoyed that. I like, as soon as he said it, it kind of clicked with me, They're making these vows to each other. Literally, they're exchanging these vows, right? But they're also, like, in a way, like, we don't know that we're ever necessarily going to see each other again. I'm about to send you off into certain peril to go deal with this thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's heavy, man. Yeah.
Everyone turns their backs on Moraine as she leaves. This is ceremonial, or is this a specific dig, Rich?
This seems ceremonial. In the text, Moraine's not, she's not exiled. This is a huge pivot. So this is a choice that they made here, and I think it's ceremonial, and I think it's visually evocative. They're turning their back on her. Moraine now walks alone, right?
Yeah. So she leaves, and then she rides out, and there's this huge reunion with all of the characters at what we come to learn is Awaygate. There's some great moments here. The whole "you look like shit" moment. Well, I've been on the road for a month. It's really great to see some of this interpersonal reconnection between the Edmonds Fielders.
Here's my nitpicking. I wish by episode 6 we would have had more time with these kids. I'm realizing as we're coming to a close on this first season, we spent what seems to me like a pretty small amount of time with them over the like runtime of 6 episodes, right? And I do think it's super important that we're in on Lan and Moraine. There's some of the characters that pop when you read the books. They're accomplished and capable and exciting, and they're badass, right? And we'll have plenty of time to like get to know these 5. But I like this scene. I was really happy to like see them all reunited. It delighted me. Also, small note for the book fans out there, but Lan's horse is like a horse of some notoriety, and as they come riding up, I'm like eyeing Lan's horse really closely, like, is this a worthy Mandarb, the horse? And it was. I approve of this Mandarb for anybody out there who cares.
They send the horses off.
They do.
And everyone's like, no.
I was very sad. Mandarb came, and then he was gone. I was a little disappointed. Clearly, I have a real thing about Mandarb. Why that is, I don't know. We'll explore at another time, but not right now.
Yeah, so the horses are gone because they wouldn't survive the ways, which are ancient pathways that exist outside of time and space. One step inside could be hundreds of miles in our world. That's the explanation that's given to us on the show. And by the end of the episode, we see that this, sort of stone archway that they've arrived at in the middle of this field is going to be, magically powered so that they can go through, and they're suddenly in sort of this nether space, as it were. The arch itself and getting here feels different to me in my memory of how this happens in Eye of the World. That's totally fine. This is totally fine. But the way that the ways operate seems, at least right now, to be fairly similar to how I remember it in the Eye of the World. But can you explain a little bit about this concept as far as what we may expect for where our characters wind up at the end of this episode? This is obviously a really important new world-building concept that's just been dropped on us.
Yep. So at the risk of like not saying enough, I believe next episode is called The Ways, and so I expect that we're gonna get like a deep dive there. So I want to like not like overstate it, but yeah, the ways are ancient pathways, right?
Yeah,
There's
the dark along the ways is what's coming next.
There you go. So we'll see how much kind of lore we dig into there, and I'll certainly have more to say. We're gonna be nerding out about the ways on the book club this week. The ways, they kind of circumnavigate all around the world. They're very tethered to the Ogier. They were originally like kind of built for the Ogier. There's in the X-ray feature, for those who aren't going to get a chance to check it out, they talk about the longing. Ogier are from steadings. This is the name for Ogier homes. Steadings are essentially these great groves of ancient trees, the most ancient trees. Some of them date back 3,000 years and endured the breaking of the world. But the notion is when Luther and Telamon, the dragon, broke the world, the steadings were like shifted all around. The Ogier lost their homes, and so they began to wander the earth. And the longer an Ogier is away from the steading, this longing fills up inside of them, a literal need to find their home, that if they are not reunited geographically with those spaces, they can die. They can wither up and die. So the ways are actually a gift that was made for the Ogier after the breaking of the world by the male channelers, the male Aes Sedai of old. And so there's like a lot of really cool lore there, and what's happened to them since is its own interesting story. But clearly, Loyal says, the horses won't survive. We're heading right in, though. Come on, let's go. Which we should take to be as ominous as it sounds, right?
Right, yeah. Sounds scary. It sounds like this could be
Looks
a dangerous place
too.
for them. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously like very bleak, dark, just hard to see. So what all of that is going to look like as we go through the dark along the ways is anyone's guess. Moraine has a little bit of a pump-up speech before they go through. She's saying, we have to go and finish the job. This is the fastest way to the Eye of the World, which is the Dark One's prison. The Dark One is weak. If we do not stop him now, the world will turn to darkness, and what they did to your village is going to be nothing compared to what they will do to the world writ large. And it's asked, well, what's going to happen to whoever of us isn't the dragon?
It's asked
Moraine
by
says,
Egwene. She's got the pragmatic questions, which I just noted. I love that. Yep.
Yeah, we can't know for certain until that moment comes. So those are the stakes heading into the ways, and everybody seems to, kind of accept that they're going to be on board. Rand and Egwene are back together. That's what's important. Matt and Perrin have this very fun moment together. You would think that that's enough, but it's not enough for all of them, because Matt stays behind as everybody else is in the way, and the gate starts to close, and it does, and Matt is on the other side of it. And that's the end of the episode. Very provocative.
Very provocative.
Matt is absolutely in the ways in the book at this point in the Eye of the World.
Yep, we're making like huge changes. That's what's so interesting, right? So we're putting in these all new scenes that are kind of carrying forward emotional themes that like we know from the books, but we're making different choices to a bunch of them distinctly. Butterfly effect, there will be ripples here. What does this mean for Matt? Where does it go? I do just want to harp on that one beat as Moraine goes, like right before she steps in. She's like, whatever happens is beyond our control. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, which is the kind of eternal mantra here of the Wheel of Time, right? The wheel doesn't care. It has no emotions. The pattern doesn't care. We're all woven into it, and it will place us where we need to be. So I think that that's interesting that we hear her like offer this sentiment just as Matt lingers behind. Does that mean he's not the dragon? Does that mean he is? I don't know. And that's really what's so wild about this, Josh, is for the amount of changes they have made to this story that I love so much. God, I'm still here for all of this. I'm adoring it. And I'm on the edge of my seat because I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what kind of changes they're going to make. I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'm optimistic. All kinds of feelings, man.
Adaptation can be really, really fun as a super fan of the thing that's being adapted, especially when it zigs where you expect it to zag. I actually, as long as the zigging is executed well, at a high caliber, I'm into it. I think about Final Fantasy VII Remake versus Final Fantasy VII, which has so much of that. There's so many things that happen in that game that are wildly away from the original game, and